I heard my 8-year-old wife say over the phone, "He already left, baby. Come over quick." At that exact moment, I was hiding inside the closet of our guest room, holding my breath. Just 5 minutes earlier, she had kissed my cheek at the front door and said, "Have a great day at work, honey." Before I continue, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell because we have new stories every single day. Leave a like and tell us in the comments what city you're watching from. My name is Arthur Miller. I'm 52 years old and I'm an architect. For 24 years, I believed I had a rock-solid marriage with Vanessa, my 8-year-old wife. We got married in June 2000 when I was 28 and she was 24. We built a beautiful life together, an $850,000 three-story house in Evanston, a quiet suburb of Chicago. We had 2 kids, Evan 26 and Lily 23. I thought we shared a genuine love built on mutual trust. I run an architectural firm I founded 18 years ago. It's a successful business that pulls in between $250,000 and $300,000 a year. I was always the primary provider for our family. Vanessa never worked outside the home after Evan was born, dedicating herself completely to being a stay-at-home mom. I paid for absolutely everything. The $3,500 monthly mortgage, the utilities, the groceries, our annual family vacations, the cars, the kids' college tuitions. I never once complained. I thought I was simply fulfilling my role as a responsible husband and father. But in March 2024, exactly 4 months before the day that would shatter my entire reality, I started noticing subtle changes in Vanessa. Little things that I completely brushed off at first. She started going to the gym 3 times a week, something she hadn't done in all our years of marriage. She said she wanted to take better care of her health and feel good about herself. I found it a bit out of the blue, but ultimately positive. I even bought her $400 worth of new Lululemon workout gear, thinking I was being a supportive husband. Then came the phone habits. Vanessa had always left her iPhone on the kitchen island or the couch without a second thought. Suddenly, it was glued to her hand. She took it everywhere, the bathroom, the bedroom, the backyard. When I'd ask who was texting her after seeing her screen light up, she'd vaguely reply, "Nobody important, just the gym group chat," or claim a friend was asking for a recipe. Her tone was casual, but her eyes always avoided mine. The perfume was another red flag. For years, Vanessa wore the same classic floral Chanel scent I had bought her for our 10th anniversary. In April, she started wearing a new fragrance, something much heavier, sweeter, and more youthful. Whenever she put it on before her 1:00 a.m. gym sessions, the entire house would smell like it for hours. "Don't you like it?" she asked me once, twirling in front of the mirror. My personal trainer recommended it. He says it smells fresh and sporty. The personal trainer. Hunter Hayes. That name started popping up in her daily conversations with alarming frequency. Hunter says I should do more cardio. Hunter showed me a new leg routine. Hunter recommends this protein powder. At first, I chalked it up to normal professional admiration. Personal trainers aren't cheap. He charged $85 a session, and I was happily paying for 3 sessions a week without batting an eye. I wanted Vanessa to be happy. But there was something about the way she said his name, a certain softness, a familiarity that started twisting a knot of inexplicable anxiety in my gut. By June, things escalated. Vanessa began disappearing for long stretches of time. She'd say she was going to Whole Foods and return 4 hours later with just 2 small grocery bags. "I grabbed coffee with Alice," she'd say. But when I ran into Alice in town a few days later, she casually mentioned she hadn't seen Vanessa in months. The lies were glaringly obvious, but I kept giving her the benefit of the doubt. 24 years of marriage carries a lot of weight. I didn't want to believe what my gut was screaming at me. Then came Friday, the 12th of July, 2024. The day I decided to put an end to the doubts eating me alive. I woke up at 6:00 a.m. like I always do. Brewed some coffee, showered, and put on my gray work suit. Vanessa was still asleep. I walked over to the bed and stared at her for a long time. Her face was relaxed, still so beautiful after all these years. Was it really possible this woman was betraying me, or was I just going crazy with paranoia? I went down to the kitchen and packed my briefcase just like any normal day. But this time I added something different. My fully charged smartphone set to silent mode with the voice recorder app open and ready. I quietly went back upstairs to the 2nd floor and slipped into the guest bedroom, a room we hardly ever used. I opened the walk-in closet. It was spacious, about 6 feet wide. I shoved some old storage boxes aside to make room. I placed a small throw pillow on the floor and a completely empty plastic water bottle I had prepared the night before. I knew that if my suspicions were right, I might be waiting in there for hours. At exactly 7:30 a.m., I marched down the stairs, intentionally making my dress shoes click loudly against the hardwood. I walked into the master bedroom where Vanessa was now awake, sitting up in bed and scrolling through her phone. "Heading to the office, honey," I said, forcing my voice to sound as normal as possible. She looked up, gave me a bright smile, and got out of bed to kiss my cheek. "Have a great day at work, honey. I love you." Her words sounded so incredibly genuine that, for a split second, I second-guessed my entire plan. I walked out of the room, stomped loudly down the stairs, and opened and slammed the heavy oak front door. I even started my car in the driveway and let the engine run for about 30 seconds before shutting it off. Then, with my heart hammering violently against my ribs, I crept back into the house using the side door by the garage, a door we almost never used. I slipped off my shoes to avoid making a sound, padded silently up the stairs, and ducked into the guest room closet. I pulled the door shut, leaving only a fraction of an inch cracked open so I could breathe and listen. It was pitch black. I sat down on the pillow and hit record on my phone. Then began the longest, most agonizing wait of my entire life. 5 minutes later, I heard quick, hurried footsteps. It was Vanessa running up the stairs, followed by her clear, excited voice on the phone. "He already left, baby. Come over now. We have the house to ourselves until 2:00 p.m. My entire world collapsed in that single instant. Inside the closet, the darkness felt suffocating. I could hear my own heartbeat thumping in my ears like war drums. Vanessa's words kept echoing in my skull. "He already left, baby. Come over now. Baby." She was calling another man baby after 24 years of marriage. After building a family, a whole life together. I gripped my phone with trembling hands, making sure the red recording numbers were still ticking upward. 000217. Every documented second would be irrefutable proof of what I was about to witness. I took slow, deep breaths, trying to swallow down the nausea rising in my throat. I couldn't afford to make a single sound. I heard Vanessa rushing around the house. Her footsteps hurried down the stairs, then the sound of the shower turning on. The water ran for exactly 15 minutes. Then more footsteps lighter this time. She was probably barefoot on the hardwood. The heavy, sweet scent of her new perfume wafted all the way up to the second floor, seeping through the cracks of my hiding spot. That scent, which I had once just thought of as different, now felt like toxic fumes burning my nostrils. At 8:17 a.m., according to my phone's clock, the doorbell rang. My entire body went rigid. This was it. Vanessa sprinted down the stairs. The door opened, and then I heard a male voice, deep, young, confident. "Hey, gorgeous, I missed you." It was Hunter. I knew it instantly, because I had heard that voice before when I dropped by the gym to pay for her monthly sessions. He had been at the front desk chatting with a client, tall, muscular, dark hair, slicked back with gel, maybe in his early 30s. And now, he was standing in my foyer. "I missed you too," Vanessa replied, using a voice I didn't even recognize. It was soft, flirtatious, dripping with a desire I hadn't heard directed at me in years. The unmistakable sound of a long, wet kiss echoed up the stairs, followed by soft giggling. "Get in here quick, I don't want the neighbors to see your car." The front door clicked shut. Their footsteps came up the stairs together. They walked right past the guest bedroom where I was hiding. Every muscle in my body froze. If they decided to come in here, if they opened this closet for any reason, it would all be over in an instant. But they walked right past and headed straight into the master bedroom. Our bedroom. The bed I had slept in for 24 years. "You sure he won't be back until 2?" Hunter asked. His voice was relaxed, casual, like this was just a regular Friday routine for him. "Positive," Vanessa replied confidently. "He always has client meetings on Friday mornings, and then he does lunch with his firm partners. He never gets home before 3, Hunter. We have all the time in the world, baby." The creak of the bed springs. More laughter. I squeezed my eyes shut in the dark, even though I couldn't see anything anyway. Silent tears began to stream down my cheeks. 42 minutes later, at 9:03 a.m., they finally went downstairs. I heard Hunter in the kitchen pulling open the stainless steel refrigerator. "Mind if I grab something to eat? I'm starving after that cardio," he chuckled. Vanessa laughed along with him. "Of course, whatever you want. Everything in this house is paid for by Arthur working himself to the bone, so enjoy." Those words sliced through me like a scalpel. She spoke about me with such deep contempt, as if I were just some foolish ATM funding her lifestyle while she slept with another man under my own roof. I listened to the clinking of silverware and plates. Hunter was eating the groceries I had literally bought at Trader Joe's 3 days ago. "When are you going to tell him the truth?" Hunter asked after a few minutes of chewing. There was a long pause. "It's not the right time yet," Vanessa finally said. "I need to make sure I have all my ducks in a row first." I've already transferred about $15,500 to my personal account over the last 4 months. He hasn't even noticed. He's so obsessed with his blueprints and his firm that he doesn't pay attention to anything else. My blood ran ice cold. $15,500. I frantically mentally reviewed our joint bank statements. Little amounts here and there that I had completely ignored because I trusted her implicitly. A $800 withdrawal one day, $150 another. Cash withdrawals that looked like normal household expenses but were actually funding her betrayal. "You're so smart," Hunter said, his voice full of admiration. "When you finally drop him, we won't have to hide anymore. We'll live the life we actually deserve." Vanessa sighed dreamily. "Yeah, baby, but I have to be careful. Arthur has a lot of money tied up in properties and the business. Illinois law can be tricky. If I play my cards wrong, I could walk away with less. I need to prepare." I kept recording every single word. My phone showed 004730 of captured audio. It was irrefutable evidence, but I needed more. I needed to hear everything to fully grasp the sheer depth of this betrayal before I made any moves. At 10:30 a.m., they went back upstairs to the bedroom. This time, I forced my mind to detach. I focused on anything else. I counted the thin slivers of light seeping through the closet door louvers. 12 thin lines of light in an abyss of darkness. I thought about Evan and Lily. My kids. Did they know anything about this? Was it possible their mother had hidden such a massive deception from them too? Or were they somehow complicit? At 11:45 a.m., I heard them back on the ground floor. Vanessa was cooking. The smell of an omelet wafted up the stairs. "You know what's hilarious?" Hunter said with his mouth full. "He literally pays for my training sessions with you, having no idea that after we sweat together at the gym, we end up sweating here." They both erupted into laughter like it was the funniest joke in the world. My legs were going completely numb. I had been crouched in this tiny space for over 4 hours. The empty plastic bottle I brought had already been used twice out of biological necessity. The throw pillow under me did nothing against the hardwood floor, but the physical pain was absolutely nothing compared to the emotional agony of listening to my wife plot my total destruction with such shameless glee. At 12:15 p.m., I finally heard the sentence I was waiting for. "I gotta get going," Hunter said. "I don't want to risk the mailman or a neighbor seeing me leave in broad daylight." Vanessa protested softly, but he insisted. "I'll see you Monday at the gym like always, and next Friday we'll do this again. Deal, baby." Another long kiss. The front door opened and closed. Vanessa trotted upstairs, humming a pop song I didn't recognize. She went into the master bedroom. I heard the sound of the bed sheets being stripped, then the washing machine downstairs turning on. She was destroying the physical evidence, completely unaware that the most damning evidence of all was digitally secured on a smartphone less than 30 feet away from her. I looked at my screen. The recording was at 041208. 4 hours and 12 minutes of crystal clear audio. Complete conversations, confessions of embezzlement, plans to rob me, cruel mockery, all documented. I stopped the recording and saved the file with the exact date and time. This was going to be my ammunition when the time came to go to war. But I couldn't leave the closet just yet. I needed to wait to ensure Hunter wasn't coming back for a forgotten item and that Vanessa was sufficiently distracted. So I sat there in the dark, my marriage dead, my trust shattered, and the life I knew completely annihilated. I stayed in that closet until 12:40 p.m. 4 hours and 45 minutes locked in a claustrophobic box smelling of old cedar and dust. My legs were completely asleep. It felt like invisible needles were stabbing my calves every time I twitched. My lower back was screaming from the unnatural posture. But again, the physical pain was utterly insignificant compared to the gaping void expanding in my chest. I heard Vanessa go back downstairs. The TV flicked on some daytime cooking show she liked to watch in the afternoons. Her normal routine. As if nothing had happened. As if she hadn't just been in our marital bed with another man less than an hour ago. As if she hadn't been plotting to rob me blind and abandon me after 2.5 decades. I opened the closet door with excruciating caution. The midday sun pouring through the guest room window blinded me momentarily. It took several seconds for my eyes to adjust. I crawled out of my hiding spot with clumsy, silent movements. My knees popped audibly when I finally managed to stand up. I had severe cramps in both legs. I stood frozen by the closed bedroom door, listening intently for any sign she was coming upstairs. But the TV blared on downstairs. She was distracted. I took that moment to check my phone. Battery at 34%. The audio file was 478 megabytes. I immediately uploaded it to my secure cloud storage using cellular data, creating 3 backup copies on different servers. I could not risk losing this evidence under any circumstances. I tiptoed out of the guest room, ignoring the sharp pain in my numb feet. I crept down the stairs, hugging the wall to avoid the creaky center steps. I made it to the kitchen where I had left my briefcase that morning. I grabbed it silently, then slipped out the side door into the dark garage. I opened my car door, millimeter by millimeter got in, started the engine, and backed out of the driveway just as I would on any normal day. As I drove away, I looked at the dashboard clock, 1:25, 3 p.m. Vanessa wasn't expecting me until 3:00 p.m. I had over 2 hours to process the trauma I had just endured. I drove aimlessly through the Chicago suburbs. My hands were shaking so hard they vibrated against the steering wheel. At a red light, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. My eyes were bloodshot and swollen. My tie was crooked. My hair was a mess. I looked like a man who had aged 10 years in a single morning. I ended up parking at a quiet nature preserve about 20 minutes from the house. I needed to think. I needed to decide what to do with this devastating arsenal of information I now possessed. The obvious emotional choice was to storm back home, play the recording over the Bluetooth speakers, demand an explanation, and throw her out onto the street. But something stopped me. A cold, calculating voice in my head that I had never heard before. If I confront her now with only one audio recording, she'll invent excuses. She'll say it was role play, that I misunderstood the context, that she was just venting. She'll cry, manipulate my emotions, play the 24 years together card. And worse, if I confront her without being fully legally prepared, she'll immediately start moving more money, hiding assets, and lawyering up. I didn't need to be a genius to see how that would end. For 24 years, I was the trusting husband who worked too hard and assumed the best of his family. But that version of Arthur Miller died in a dark closet this morning. The man sitting in this parked car was different, colder, more strategic. I am an architect. I know exactly how to build something solid, and by extension, I know exactly how to orchestrate a controlled demolition. I pulled out my phone and logged into our Chase bank accounts. I scrutinized the joint checking account. Withdrawals that previously looked normal now glared at me. An $850 cash withdrawal on March 15th labeled Target, groceries. Another $1,200 on April 3rd for clothing. $920 on April 28th for pharmacy. Household. I kept scrolling. $780 on May 12th. $1. $100 on June 4th. $890 on June 19th. $740 on July 8th. I mentally tallied every suspicious ATM withdrawal and odd transfer over the last 4 months. The total was exactly $15,520. Vanessa had boasted about $15,500 to Hunter. She had been systematically siphoning money from our family account, stealing right under my nose. I made good money, so I never micromanaged the budget. I trusted her blindly. That trust was my fatal flaw. Next, I opened my business banking app. I had $187 0 inches fixed-term investments, $94 0 inches the firm's operating account, and $43 0 inches a personal emergency savings account. Vanessa didn't even know existed. Adding up the equity of our 2 properties, my equity in the architecture firm, our cars, and joint investment accounts, my total net worth hovered around $2.2 million. Illinois is an equitable distribution state. That meant in a standard divorce, the judge would divide the marital assets fairly, which usually ends up close to 50/50 for a long-term marriage where one spouse stayed home. She would legally be entitled to over $1 million. Money she would take straight to Hunter to fund their new life together, leaving me emotionally and financially gutted. Except now I had proof of adultery, and more importantly, proof of the dissipation of marital assets. Adultery alone doesn't sway a judge much in modern U.S. divorce courts. But stealing marital funds to fund an affair or stash in a secret account, judges despise that. If I could definitively prove she was embezzling from the marriage, it would drastically alter the division of assets. But I needed more than one recording and a few bank statements. I needed an ironclad paper trail, photographs of Hunter coming and going, logs of their communication, a completely airtight investigation that left zero room for doubt. And I had to do it all in total silence, smiling at her every day, until I was fully armed. I Googled private investigators in the Chicago area. I found an agency called Peterson Investigations in the Loop with stellar reviews. I dialed the number. A gruff, professional voice answered, "Peterson Investigations, Gary speaking." I explained my situation concisely. Gary Peterson listened without interrupting once. When I finished, there was a brief silence. "Mr. Miller, this is a lot more common than you'd think. I can definitely help you. But you need to understand one thing. Once you open this box, you can't close it. Are you absolutely sure you want to know everything? I looked out the car window at the empty park. An older man was tossing bread to ducks. A young couple jogged by holding hands and laughing. Normal life was carrying on all around me while my entire universe had burned to ash. I am completely sure, I replied, my voice possessing a firmness that surprised even me. I want to know absolutely everything. Every lie, every meetup, every stolen dollar. Everything. Gary explained his retainer was $3,500 for 2 weeks of intensive surveillance, which included photo, video evidence, and a detailed daily log. I paid the retainer over the phone with my secret emergency card. We agreed to meet in his office that coming Monday. I hung up the phone and took a deep breath. The next step was the hardest part. I had to go home, walk through that door, and pretend absolutely nothing was wrong. I had to smile at the woman who was trying to destroy me while secretly building the case that would destroy her. I drove home, pulling into the driveway at exactly 3:17 p.m. I parked in the garage and walked through the front door. "I'm home," I called out, with fake enthusiasm. Vanessa emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She was wearing a light blue sundress I had never seen before. Her makeup was flawless. She looked stunning. She looked like a traitor. "Hey, honey, how was your day?" she asked, walking up and beaming at me. I looked directly into her eyes, searching for a microscopic trace of guilt, of shame, of humanity. I found nothing, just the same perfect mask she had been wearing for God knows how long. "Very productive," I replied, leaning in to kiss her cheek. It was a very revealing day. On Monday, July 15th at 9:00 a.m., I met with Gary Peterson at his office downtown. He was 58 with slicked back gray hair, a sharp dark suit, and the tired eyes of a man who had seen too many stories exactly like mine. His desk was covered in file folders, and his dual monitor setup showed various camera feeds. "Mr. Miller, before we start, I need you to sign these NDAs," he said, sliding a folder toward me. "Everything we find stays between you and me until you're ready to take it to your lawyer. I also need you to understand my job is strictly documenting facts, not judging them." I signed without reading the fine print. I just wanted answers. I handed him a recent photo of Vanessa from our vacation to Maui last year. I also gave him photos of Hunter I had easily scraped from the FitLife Gym's Instagram page. Gary studied them. "All right, we start surveillance this Wednesday. I need her weekly scheduled gym days, typical errands, places she frequents. The more data I have, the less time we waste." For the next 14 days, I lived a schizophrenic double life. Every morning I woke up next to Vanessa, ate breakfast with her, and made mundane small talk about the weather or the news. She'd ask about my architecture projects, and I'd invent fake stressful deadlines just to watch her pretend to care. Every micro-expression on her face disgusted me. On the evenings, when Evan and Lily came over for family dinners, we played the role of the perfect affluent suburban family. But internally, every interaction was a calculated performance. Every time she kissed my cheek, I had to suppress a physical gag reflex. Every time she said "I love you," it sounded like glass shattering in my ears. At night, I slept facing the wall, claiming I had pulled a back muscle at work. I couldn't bear to touch her. The sheer thought of her hands, the same hands that had been all over Hunter touching my skin, made my stomach churn. Every evening, Gary sent me encrypted reports. On Wednesday, July 17th, he documented their first meetup. Vanessa left the house at 10:30 a.m. in tight Lululemon leggings. She drove to FitLife and walked in at 10:52 a.m. Hunter was waiting at the front desk. They hugged a hug that lingered far too long to be professional. They trained for an hour. Gary attached 16 photos, showing them at various machines, always standing too close. Hunter's hands constantly lingering on her waist or hips. At 12:15 p.m. they left the gym. But instead of going home, Vanessa followed Hunter's Jeep to an apartment complex in Wicker Park. Photos showed them walking into the building together. Gary waited in his car. 2 hours and 40 minutes later, they emerged. In one telephoto shot taken from across the street, Hunter was clearly buckling his belt while Vanessa was aggressively adjusting her messy hair. You didn't need to be a detective to know what just happened. On Friday, July 19th, exactly 1 week after my closet discovery, Vanessa repeated her routine. I left the house at 7:30 a.m. Gary confirmed Hunter arrived at our house at 8:10 a.m. This time, Gary had discreetly installed a motion-activated trail cam in a tree across from my driveway. The video footage showed Hunter walking up to my front door and unlocking it with his own key. Vanessa had given him a key to my home. My sanctuary had been invaded by this parasite with total impunity. Over those 2 weeks, Gary documented 14 encounters. 3 times in my own house on Friday mornings, 6 times at Hunter's Wicker Park apartment after gym sessions, twice at a cheap boutique hotel near Union Station where they booked day rates, once in his Jeep parked in a secluded corner of Lincoln Park, and 2 romantic lunches at upscale restaurants where they openly held hands and kissed, clearly not caring who saw them. The photos were soul-crushing. Hands intertwined over a plate of pasta, Hunter kissing her neck while she laughed with her eyes closed. They looked like a normal couple with nothing to hide. But on Thursday, July 25th, I received the nuclear payload. Gary had managed to record a conversation between Vanessa and Hunter at the gym's juice bar, using a directional parabolic microphone from a table 30 feet away. The audio was pristine. "Vanessa, I almost have everything set up. I've been funneling money out slowly so he doesn't catch on. Once I hit $30 0 inches my solo account, that'll be enough to cover the divorce lawyer retainer and our first few months of rent. Hunter, what about your kids? Do they suspect anything?" There was a pause. "Vanessa, Evan, and Lily have known for 2 months. I sat them down and told them. At first, Lily was upset, but I explained to her that her father is a workaholic who never actually pays attention to me. Evan got it right away. They're both going to support me when the time comes." Those words hit me with the force of a freight train. Worse than any photo. Worse than the cheating. My kids knew. For 2 months, my children had come over for dinner, hugged me, called me Dad, and looked me dead in the eye, knowing the entire time that their mother was destroying our family. Not only did they know they had picked a side, they didn't warn me. They didn't protect me. They simply bought Vanessa's manufactured narrative, where I was the negligent villain, and decided I deserved to be made a fool of. On Friday, July 26th, I decided to verify this myself. I invited Evan to lunch at a quiet steakhouse near his digital marketing job downtown. He showed up at 1:00 p.m. wearing a casual button-down and khakis. "Hey, Dad. Everything okay? It's rare for you to drag me out for lunch during the week," he said, sitting down with a curious look. We ordered. We made small talk about his job for a bit. Then, as the waiter dropped off our steaks, I casually dropped the bait. "How do you think your mom is doing lately?" Evan chewed his steak slowly before answering. "Good, I guess. Why do you ask?" There was a subtle defensiveness in his tone that confirmed my worst fears. "She just seems happier lately," I pushed. "More dressed up. Going out more." Evan looked down at his plate. "People change, Dad. Mom is just in a phase where she wants to focus on herself. Nothing wrong with that." The way he immediately threw up a protective shield for her told me everything. He knew, and he was actively covering her tracks. "Is there something I should know, Evan?" I asked, looking him dead in the eye. "My 6-year-old son. The boy I carried on my shoulders at Wrigley Field. The kid whose entire college tuition I paid for out of pocket held my gaze for 3 seconds before breaking it. I don't know what you're talking about, Dad. Everything is normal." He lied to my face with the exact same sociopathic ease as his mother. That night, I called Lily. She lived in an apartment near DePaul University with roommates. "Hey, Daddy, what's wrong? You sound weird," she said, her voice laced with genuine concern. For a second, my resolve wavered. Lily had always been my little girl. But I had to know. "I need to ask you something important, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Has your mother told you anything about her personal life lately? Something I should be aware of?" There was a long silence on the line. Too long. "Daddy, if Mom has something to tell you, she needs to be the one to do it. I can't get in the middle of your guys' marriage." Her non-answer was the ultimate confirmation. My 3-year-old daughter had decided that keeping her mother's dirty secret was more important than her loyalty to her father. "I understand," I said, my voice completely hollow. "Sleep well, Lily." I hung up before she could say another word. I sat in my home office that night, surrounded by the dossier, 247 photographs, 8 hours of video footage, audio recordings, highlighted bank statements, a 3-4-page professional PI report detailing every lie and every stolen dollar, and now the absolute confirmation that my own children were complicit in my humiliation. Vanessa's betrayal was a knife in the back, but Evan and Lily's betrayal was a bullet to the chest. It destroyed the very core of who I thought I was as a father. On Saturday, July 27th, I booked a private room at an upscale restaurant downtown and told Evan and Lily I needed to have a serious family meeting. They both arrived right on time at 8:30 p.m. I immediately noticed the nervous look they exchanged when they saw me sitting alone at the large table with no Vanessa in sight. They knew something was wrong. "Where's Mom?" Lily asked, draping her jacket over her chair. She was wearing a green dress I had bought her for her 22nd birthday. Evan sat down without a word, but his body language was rigid, defensive, like an animal bracing for impact. Your mother doesn't know about this dinner, I said, keeping my voice perfectly level, and I prefer to keep it that way for now. I ordered food for us, but before it gets here, I need to show you both something. I pulled my iPad out of my briefcase. I opened a digital folder labeled July 2024. Evan leaned forward, squinting. Dad, what is this? I didn't answer. I just swiped to the first photo. It was Vanessa and Hunter making out aggressively outside the Wicker Park apartment. The telephoto lens made the image crystal clear, his hands gripping her waist, her eyes closed in obvious ecstasy. All the color instantly drained from Lily's face. Dad, she started, but her voice cracked and died. Evan, however, hardened his jaw. Did you spy on her? You hired a private investigator to follow Mom. He sounded indignantly offended, as if I was the villain for uncovering the truth rather than remaining a happily ignorant ATM. Answer me with absolute honesty, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. How long have you two known that your mother was sleeping with another man? The silence in the room was deafening. Lily stared at her hands trembling. Evan held my gaze for 5 agonizing seconds before letting out a harsh sigh and leaning back in his chair. 2 months, Evan finally admitted. Mom told us around Memorial Day. She said she had fallen in love with someone else, but that she needed time to figure out the logistics before she dropped the bomb on you. Every word out of his mouth was like battery acid. And neither of you thought that maybe your father deserved to know that I had a right to the truth. Lily looked up, tears brimming in her eyes. Dad, you don't understand. Mom has been so lonely for years while you just work 24/7. She needed attention. She needed someone who actually saw her. She was regurgitating Vanessa's manipulative script verbatim. The fiction where I was the negligent monster who deserved to be cheated on because I worked hard to provide them an upper-class life. So, according to your logic, I said, leaning forward, I deserved this. I deserved to have my wife bring her lover into my own bed. I deserved to have her systematically embezzle money from my bank accounts for months. I deserved to have my own children look me in the eye and lie to me to protect the person destroying me. I swiped through the photos on the iPad, picture after picture, irrefutable proof. Evan slammed his hand on the table. Dad, I get that you're hurt, but relationships are complicated. You and Mom have been roommates for years. She just went out and found what she wasn't getting at home. The sheer audacity he had to justify this left me momentarily speechless. This was my son, the boy I taught how to drive, the boy whose rent I was currently subsidizing. Do you guys know how much money I've handed to both of you over the last 2 years? I asked, pivoting the conversation abruptly. They both looked confused by the sudden change in topic. Evan, I transfer $1,500 into your account every single month to help with your downtown rent since you graduated. That's $42,000 over the last 28 months. Lily, I pay your $1,200 rent plus your $25,000 annual DePaul tuition out of pocket. In total, I've spent over $85,000 on your college life so far. I let the numbers hang in the air. That's not including the cars I bought you, the iPhones, the family trips to Hawaii, the health insurance. A conservative estimate says I've invested about $150,000 purely into your adult lifestyles in the last few years alone. And when your mother decided to blow up this family, when you had to make a choice between basic loyalty to your father or protecting her lies, you chose her. Lily started openly sobbing. That's not fair, Dad. You're making it sound transactional. We didn't want to hurt you. We just thought it was Mom's mess to clean up. Her tears didn't move me. Not anymore. Something fundamental inside my soul had snapped. My capacity to be emotionally manipulated by them was gone. Here is what's going to happen, I said with a glacial coldness that shocked even me. Starting August 1st, which is in 4 days, both of you are completely cut off. Not a single cent more. Evan, your $1,500 monthly transfer is canceled. Lily, your tuition and rent payments are canceled. Furthermore, I am calling my estate lawyer on Monday. You are both being completely removed from my will. When I die, which I hope isn't for a very long time, you will receive absolutely nothing from my estate. The utter shock on their faces was palpable. Evan lurched forward. Dad, are you insane? You can't punish us because Mom made a mistake. A mistake, I repeated the word dryly. He called months of premeditated adultery, fraud, and embezzlement a mistake. I'm not punishing you, I corrected him. I am simply treating you like the independent adults you claim to be. Adults who made a conscious decision about where their loyalty lies. You chose your mother's team. Fantastic. Let Hunter and your mother fund your lifestyles from now on. Lily shook her head frantically. Daddy, please, no, I can't pay for DePaul on my own. I only work part-time as a waitress. I barely make $1,000 a month. I'll be evicted. Her words, which normally would have broken my heart, only cemented my resolve. Then I suppose you'll have to make some tough adult decisions. Take out student loans, pick up more shifts, or go ask your mother. The mention of Hunter made Evan grit his teeth. So you're just going to be a vindictive prick. Is that who you really are, Dad? I leaned back, observing him with a calmness I didn't actually feel. I'm not vindictive, Evan. I am just... For 26 years, I gave you everything you needed without asking for anything in return except basic respect and honesty. When the ultimate test of loyalty came, you failed. Spectacularly. The waiter arrived with our steaks, placing the expensive cuts of meat in front of us. None of us touched our silverware. The heavy silence was suffocating. Finally, Lily spoke, her voice trembling. Is there anything we can do to fix this? To make you change your mind? I looked at her. In her green eyes that looked exactly like Vanessa's, I searched for a shred of genuine remorse for the emotional damage they caused me. I found none. I only saw sheer panic about their financial ruin. No, I replied with absolute finality. This is permanent. You will build your own lives without my money. You're going to learn what it actually means to earn $1. And maybe one day, though I seriously doubt it, you'll understand the value of family loyalty. I stood up from the table, tossing $200 bills onto the tablecloth to cover the untouched food. You guys can stay and eat. I'm done. I walked out of the restaurant without looking back. Behind me, I heard Lily sobbing loudly and Evan cursing under his breath. Neither of them chased after me. Neither of them offered a genuine apology for the betrayal. They only regretted the consequences. That was the crucial difference that made my decision rock solid. In the parking garage, I sat in my car for 15 minutes before starting the engine. I had lost my wife. I had lost my kids. In the span of 2 weeks, my entire family had disintegrated, revealing it was built on rotten wood. But strangely, sitting there in the dark, I didn't feel weak. I felt clarity. For the first time in months, I knew exactly what my next target was. On Monday, July 29th, I requested an urgent meeting with a powerhouse family law attorney Gary Peterson had highly recommended. His name was Ed Gallagher, a 61-year-old legal shark with 30 years of experience in high-net-worth, high-conflict divorces. His office was in a sleek high-rise in the Loop overlooking Lake Michigan. Ed had neat gray hair, wire-rimmed glasses, and the no-nonsense demeanor of a man who destroyed people for a living. Mr. Miller, Gary gave me a brief rundown on the phone, but I need you to walk me through everything. Don't leave out a single detail, no matter how embarrassing, Ed said, pulling out a legal pad. For 90 minutes, I laid it all out. The closet, the audio recording, the 14 dates the PI caught, the $15, $500, siphoned from the joint checking account, the complicity of my children. Ed took meticulous notes occasionally, stopping me to ask for specific dates or dollar amounts. When I finished, Ed set his pen down and steepled his fingers. Arthur, I'm truly sorry you're going through this. I've seen 1,000 divorces, and the level of deception here is profound. Now let's talk strategy. He opened a fresh folder. Illinois is a no-fault divorce state, meaning the adultery itself won't mathematically change the division of the house or the retirement accounts. However, and this is a big however, the $15, $500 she funneled into a secret account constitutes the dissipation of marital assets. Because she spent marital funds on an affair, the judge will absolutely factor that in and award you a disproportionately larger share of the estate to make you whole. That was music to my ears. But there's something else we need to check, Ed continued, narrowing his eyes. During your marriage, did you ever grant her a power of attorney? Even temporarily? I racked my brain. Then a memory from years ago clicked into place. Yes, I said slowly. Back in 2016. I had to go to an architecture summit in Seattle for 2 weeks. We were in the middle of refinancing our condo in Clearwater, Florida, and I wasn't going to be in town to sign the closing documents. I gave her a limited power of attorney so she could sign on my behalf. Ed's expression darkened immediately. Did you ever formally revoke that POA after the refinance was done? My stomach dropped. No. I assumed it expired after the transaction. I completely forgot about it. Ed closed his eyes and sighed heavily. Arthur, I need you to authorize me to run a comprehensive forensic check on your credit and every legal transaction tied to your Social Security number over the last 5 years. If she kept that POA and used it recently without your knowledge, we are dealing with massive felony fraud. The next 4 days were a blur of forensic accounting. Ed's team pulled property records, bank histories, and credit reports. On Friday, August 2nd, at 4:30 p.m., my phone rang. It was Ed. His voice was grim. "Arthur, get down to my office immediately. We found the mother lode. I made it downtown in 20 minutes." Ed had 3 official documents spread across his mahogany desk. "Brace yourself, because this is going to make your blood boil," he warned. "In March 2024, your wife took that stale 2016 POA into a Chase branch. She used it to take out a $30,000 personal signature loan in your name. The funds were deposited directly into a solo account you don't have access to. She set up the $550 monthly autopay to come out of your business's operating account, burying it in your firm's overhead expenses so you wouldn't notice." I felt like I had been punched in the throat. "But that's identity theft. That's a felony." Ed nodded grimly. "Absolutely. But wait, it gets worse. In May 2024, she used the POA again at the Illinois DMV. She transferred the title of your BMW, the one you bought in 2021 valued at around $60,000, solely into her name. The car you drive every day isn't legally yours anymore. The rage that washed over me was entirely different from the heartbreak I felt in the closet. This wasn't emotional betrayal. This was a calculated criminal assassination of my finances. I did the math in my head. $30,000, fraudulent loan. $60,000, stolen vehicle. $15,500, embezzled cash. Total, $105,500. My wife had stolen over 6 figures from me using my trust and a forgotten piece of paper. "What are my options, Ed?" I asked, my voice trembling with adrenaline. Ed leaned forward, his eyes locked onto mine. "You have 2 paths. Path 1. We file a high-conflict divorce, cite extreme dissipation of assets, and demand full restitution in the civil settlement. Path 2. We file the civil divorce, and we concurrently file a police report with the Financial Crimes Unit for felony forgery, wire fraud, and grand theft. I highly recommend taking both paths simultaneously." "If we go to the police, what happens to her?" I asked. Ed didn't blink. "Given the dollar amount exceeds $100,000, it's a Class 1 felony in Illinois. If convicted, she is looking at mandatory restitution and potentially 4 to 15 years in state prison. Now, as a first-time nonviolent offender, a plea deal for heavy probation is likely, but she will be a convicted felon for the rest of her life." Prison. The word hung heavy in the air. Vanessa, my wife of 24 years, the mother of my children, could go to prison. A tiny fraction of me, the ghost of the man who loved her, felt a twinge of pity. But that ghost was quickly violently smothered by the reality of the monster she actually was. "File everything I said with lethal conviction. I want every single cent back. I want her to face the maximum legal consequences. I want to utterly destroy her." Ed nodded sharply. "Sign these authorizations. The divorce will take about 18 months. The criminal case might take longer. But with the paper trail we have, we hold every single card." I signed the papers. As the ink dried, a bizarre sensation washed over me: liberation. For weeks I had carried the suffocating weight of this secret. I had smiled through the pain. But now the counteroffensive had officially begun. "When do we confront her?" I asked. "Here in my office." "Tomorrow at 11:00 a.m.? Ed replied. "I'll have my paralegal draft a fake email from your accountant demanding you both come in to sign an urgent tax audit document. When she walks in, I will drop the hammer. It's crucial we do this in a controlled environment. Saturday, August 3rd, 11:00 a.m. The conference room at Ed's firm was intimidating. A massive oak table, leather chairs, and a panoramic view of the Chicago skyline. In the center of the table sat a thick navy blue binder containing 89 pages of meticulously organized evidence. The PI photos, the bank statements, the forged loan documents, the DMV title transfer, and a flash drive containing the audio files. Vanessa arrived at exactly 11:05 a.m. She walked in wearing an elegant beige trench coat and designer heels. Her hair was perfectly blown out. She looked confident, mildly annoyed at having her Saturday interrupted by tax issues. She had no idea she was walking into her own execution. When the receptionist escorted her into the conference room and she saw me sitting next to Ed, a man who was very clearly not our accountant, her face registered total confusion. "Arthur, what is this? Your text said we had an IRS issue. Who is this?" she demanded, stopping in the doorway. Ed stood up, buttoning his suit jacket. "Mrs. Miller, please have a seat. I am Edward Gallagher, your husband's divorce attorney." We've called you here today to discuss some severe legal and financial irregularities we've uncovered. Vanessa slowly sat down, her eyes darting frantically between Ed and me. Irregularities. Divorce attorney. Arthur. What the hell is going on? I finally spoke, my voice colder than ice. We're talking about Hunter Hayes. We're talking about the 14 times you slept with him in the last 2 weeks. We're talking about the $105,500 you stole from me, using a fraudulent power of attorney. Ed didn't give her a second to breathe. He flipped open the binder and slid the first photograph across the table. It was the telephoto shot of her and Hunter making out in Wicker Park, time-stamped the 17th of July, 2024, 12:15 p.m. Vanessa stared at the photo. Her hand flew to cover her mouth. You had me followed. You're spying on me. The classic cheater's pivot attack the victim for discovering the crime. I didn't spy on you, I replied evenly. I hired a professional after I heard it with my own ears. On Friday, July 12th, I didn't go to work. I hid in the guest room closet. I heard you call him. I listened to him come into my house, eat my food, and sleep with my wife in my bed. I sat in that closet for nearly 5 hours and recorded every single word you two said. I slid my iPhone across the table. The screen displayed the audio file. Length 041208. Vanessa began shaking her head rapidly. No, this isn't happening. Ed methodically laid out the rest of the paperwork. Here are the bank statements, showing $15,500 embezzled. Here is the $30,000 fraudulent loan you took out using a voided 2016 POA. And here is the forged DMV title transfer for the BMW. I had permission to use that POA. Vanessa stammered, her voice shrill with panic. Arthur gave it to me. It's legal. Ed smiled a terrifying, predatory smile. A limited POA issued in 2016 for a Florida real estate transaction does not grant you the right to take out personal loans and steal vehicles 8 years later. That is felony fraud, identity theft, and grand larceny under Illinois law. Vanessa turned to me, tears streaming down her face. The emotional manipulation was starting. Arthur, please, yes, I made mistakes. Yes, I got involved with Hunter. But you don't understand how lonely I've been. You work 80-hour weeks. I became a piece of furniture to you. I just wanted to feel alive again. Her words bounced harmlessly off the armor I had built. So it's my fault, I asked. My fault for working 80 hours a week to pay for the $850,000 house you live in? The cars you drive? The country club memberships? And the fact that you haven't had to work a job in 24 years? That justifies bringing another man into my bed, stealing $100,000, and brainwashing my own children to cover for you. That last part hit her hard. The kids. What do Evan and Lily have to do with this? I pulled out my phone and hit play on the audio clip from the gym juice bar. Vanessa's own voice echoed through the boardroom. Evan and Lily have known for 2 months. I explained to her that her father is a workaholic. They're both going to support me. Vanessa squeezed her eyes shut, sobbing into her hands. She was completely trapped. Ed delivered the final blow. Mrs. Miller, we have filed for a high-conflict divorce. We are petitioning the court for an extreme disproportionate share of the marital assets due to your blatant dissipation of funds. Furthermore, my client has filed a formal police report for the financial fraud. The Cook County State's attorney is reviewing the evidence. You are looking at a Class 1 felony charge carrying potential prison time. The word prison shattered her entirely. Prison? You can't be serious, Arthur, please. We're family. 24 years, I'll break it off with Hunter. I'll pay the money back. Let's go to counseling. Please don't destroy my life. She was begging now completely. Stripped of her dignity, I stood up, feeling decades of exhaustion in my bones. Vanessa, you destroyed your own life with every choice you made. Every time you called him. Every time you forged my signature. Every time you lied to my face. I'm just documenting the consequences. Ed slid a thick manila envelope across the table. You have just been formally served. I highly suggest you retain criminal defense counsel immediately. I walked out of the conference room, leaving my wife of 24 years weeping alone at the massive oak table. In the hallway, I didn't feel satisfaction or joy. I just felt a profound emptiness where my family used to be. But the tumor had been excised. Now I just had to survive the chemo. The war got ugly fast. On Monday, August 5th, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. It was a massive text from Hunter. I'm Hunter. What you're doing to Vanessa is psychotic. She's destroyed. You can't ruin her life just because she found real love. Be a man and accept your marriage has been dead for years. The sheer audacity of this broke 3-0. Something gym rat trying to lecture me on masculinity was astounding. Ed had warned me this might happen. I didn't reply. I took a screenshot and waited. 20 minutes later, don't ignore me. If you don't drop the criminal charges, you're gonna regret it. If you really loved her, you'd let her be happy. Another screenshot. He was digging his own grave. An hour later, he left a rambling, aggressive voicemail, calling me a coward and threatening to come to my firm and make a scene. That crossed a legal line. I sent the screenshots and the audio file straight to Ed. Add extortion and harassment to the pile, Ed texted back immediately. Then I went online and found the corporate email for FitLife Chicago's HR department. I drafted a hyper-professional email outlining that one of their trainers, Hunter Hayes, had engaged in a predatory sexual relationship with a married client, used paid training sessions as a cover for the affair, and was now actively harassing the client's husband with threats of violence. I attached the audio file of Hunter threatening me and 5 heavily redacted PI photos showing them kissing in FitLife gear outside the gym. 3 days later, I got a polite email from FitLife's regional manager stating that their company maintains a strict zero-tolerance code of ethics, and that Mr. Hayes' employment had been terminated effective immediately. Hunter had lost his job and his primary source of income, all as a direct result of his own arrogance. Vanessa called me hysterically the next day. "Hunter got fired because of you. He can't pay his rent. Are you happy now? You're a monster." I didn't fire him, Vanessa. His employer fired him for being wildly unethical. And frankly, his financial problems stopped being my concern the day you invited him into my bed. I hung up and blocked her number permanently. The legal battles consumed the next 18 months. The Cook County family court judge, a no-nonsense woman named Judge Delgado, saw right through Vanessa's high-priced defense attorney. During the property division hearing in October, Vanessa's lawyer tried to argue for a 50-over-50 split of the $2.2 million estate. Judge Delgado cut her off mid-sentence. "Counselor, your client didn't just have an affair. She systematically forged legal documents to steal over $100,000 from the marital estate to fund her exit strategy. That is egregious dissipation." The final divorce decree in January 2025 was a slaughter. I was awarded 82% of the total marital assets. I kept the architecture firm entirely. The Evanston house was ordered to be sold, and I took 82% of the equity. The Florida condo was sold, same split. Vanessa was awarded $396,000 from her 18% share. However, the judge ordered that the $105,500 she stole had to be paid back to me immediately out of her cut. She walked away with just $290,500. In the current economy, with no job history for 2 decades, that money would evaporate in a few years. Simultaneously, the criminal case was progressing. Facing an airtight case of wire fraud and forgery, Vanessa took a plea deal to avoid state prison. She pled guilty to a lesser felony charge. She received 3 years of heavy supervised probation and a permanent felony record. Her credit was destroyed. It is now October 2025, 1 year and 3 months since that morning in the closet. My life is completely unrecognizable but incredibly peaceful. I sold the massive empty Evanston house and bought a gorgeous modern 2-bedroom condo in Lincoln Park, overlooking the skyline. My architecture firm had its best year ever, clearing over $4.7 million in gross revenue on a massive new commercial contract. I've been in weekly therapy with Dr. Emily Carter, who helped me process the trauma of the betrayal without letting it turn me into a bitter cynic. I recently started dating Patty, a 8-year-old commercial real estate broker. We take things slow. She knows my whole story. We enjoy dinners, art galleries, and long, honest conversations. Gary Peterson, the PI, sent me a follow-up report a few months ago just to tie up loose ends. Vanessa is living in a cramped $1,200 a month apartment in Albany Park. Because of her felony record, no corporate office would hire her. She works as a receptionist at a sketchy dental clinic, making $15 an hour. After rent and groceries, she has virtually nothing left. The luxury life she took for granted for 24 years is a distant memory. She takes the CTA bus because she had to surrender the BMW back to me. Hunter is gone. He dumped Vanessa in December 2024. Once the thrill of the illicit affair wore off and they were just 2 broke people facing criminal charges and unemployment, the true love evaporated instantly. He moved to Miami, working at a cheap budget gym. Evan, my 6-year-old son, had to move in with his mother in Albany Park because he couldn't afford his downtown rent without my $1,500 subsidy. He works at a miserable customer service call center, buried in his own bills. Lily, my 3, Year-old daughter had to drop out of DePaul University because she couldn't secure enough student loans to cover the $25,000 tuition. She works 55 hours a week waiting tables at 2 different restaurants in Wicker Park, sharing a tiny apartment with 3 roommates. She looks exhausted, stressed, and is learning the brutal reality of survival without her father's safety net. They try to call me sometimes. Lily has left crying voicemails. Evan has sent long emails. Vanessa tries from blocked numbers. I ignore all of it. I haven't spoken to any of them in 2 years. Some people say I'm too harsh on my kids, that I should forgive them. But I've learned that forgiveness doesn't mean granting them access to my life again. They chose their side. They chose to protect the lies. My peace requires absolute distance from the people who proved they could watch me be destroyed and do nothing. I sip my black coffee on my balcony watching the sun rise over Lake Michigan. My circle is small now, Patty Ed, my therapist, a few close friends, but it is authentic. No one here is lying to me. No one is stealing from me. I demolished a rotten building, and on the empty lot, I built a foundation of absolute truth. And that is worth everything. If you liked this story, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching. It looks like your family is heading out for a vacation. They looked so incredibly happy. With those few words from my neighbor, everything finally made sense. I had just been discharged from the hospital's maternity ward. Cradling my newborn baby like a fragile little bird, I had finally come back to my own home. Familiar with the routine, I punched the passcode into our smart lock, but the machine only responded with a cold mechanical beep. My husband had left me behind, taking his mother and his sister with him. He left me and our newborn baby standing outside our own front door while they flew off on an international vacation. Standing in that drafty, air-conditioned hallway, I cried silently, just once. And right then and there, I made my decision. I made 2 phone calls immediately. The first was to my mother to come pick me up. The second was to a lawyer to put an end to all of this. A week later, my husband and his family returned laughing and in high spirits, carrying bags overflowing with designer goods from duty-free shops. But what greeted them was the door to our condo fitted with a completely different lock. "Who are you? Stop causing a scene in front of someone else's property. I bought this condo." It was only then that my husband finally noticed the single text message I had sent him. Our story begins right now. But before we get into it, please click the subscribe and like buttons below. May you always have an abundance of luck and wealth in your life. In the lobby of the hospital, Emily held her baby tightly as she walked through the automatic sliding doors. The crisp April breeze lightly lifted the corner of the baby's blanket. Emily quickly tucked it back in and gazed down at her child's face. "We're going home, sweetie." "Daddy is probably so excited to see you," Emily whispered to the baby as she slid into the back of a taxi. Seeing her familiar high-rise condo complex through the window, a warm smile naturally spread across her face. The cab pulled up to the main entrance. Emily stepped out, cradling her baby, and took the elevator up. Arriving on the 12th floor, she stood in front of her door and tapped in the passcode. A cold mechanical error tone echoed 3 times, followed by a blinking red light. Emily's fingers froze. "Wait, did I type it wrong?" she muttered to herself. She slowly and carefully typed the numbers again. The same error tone echoed down the quiet hallway. Confused, she tried a 3rd time, but the door remained deadlocked. Emily frowned. "Did Paul change the code?" she whispered, pulling her smartphone from her purse with her free hand to call him. The phone didn't even ring. It went straight to an automated voice. "The number you have dialed is currently unavailable." Emily hung up and tried again, over and over, only to hear the same robotic voice. Biting her lip, she called 5, 6, 7 times. Nothing changed. The baby in her arms started to fuss and cry. Emily rubbed the baby's back to soothe him. Glancing down, she nudged the welcome mat with her foot and noticed a slight bump. Underneath the mat lay a cold, freshly cut metal key she had never seen before. "What is this?" Emily placed the key in her palm and stared at it. In all the time they had lived there, they had never used a physical key. It was a smart lock. Now the passcode was changed, and there was a useless, unfamiliar key left behind. Her hands began to tremble. She dropped the key in the corner of the hallway and pulled out her phone to call her mother-in-law, Susan. It started ringing. Just then, the door to the neighboring unit opened, and Brenda, her neighbor, peeked out. "Oh, Emily, you're back with the baby." Brenda greeted her cheerfully, stepping out. Emily forced a polite smile and nodded. "Yes, Brenda, but the passcode isn't working. Have you seen my husband by any chance?" Brenda's eyes widened. Oh, you didn't know Paul left yesterday with his mom and sister. They were dragging huge suitcases. They caught an Uber XL to the airport. Emily's face turned to stone. It looks like your family is heading out for a vacation. They looked so incredibly happy, laughing and chatting, Brenda added, completely oblivious to the situation. Just then, Emily heard her mother-in-law's voice on the line. Hello, Emily gave Brenda a polite nod, turned her back, and pressed the phone to her ear. Mom, it's Emily. I'm standing outside the condo, but the passcode has been changed and I can't get in. I can't reach Paul either. A brief silence fell over the line. Then Susan spoke slowly, dismissively. Oh, the passcode, I don't know. You'll just have to ask Paul. That's why I'm calling you. I can't reach him. Where are you guys? I'm a little busy right now. Paul will probably call you later. I'm hanging up. Click. Susan ended the call abruptly. Emily slowly lowered the phone from her ear and leaned back against the hallway wall. The baby started crying again. Emily stared blankly at the locked door of her own home. The changed passcode, her husband's turned-off phone, and her in-laws happily wheeling their luggage away. Slowly, tears welled up in Emily's eyes. A family trip. And I'm the only one excluded, she said, her voice cracking. The fluorescent lights of the hallway cast a cold glare over her and her newborn. Wiping her tears with her sleeve, Emily picked up her phone with trembling fingers and called her mother. Mom, it's Emily. Honey, what's wrong? Were you discharged? Do you want us to come get you? Mom, come pick me up. I can't get into my house. Paul changed the lock and went on a family vacation without me. He won't answer his phone. She heard her mother take a sharp, deep breath on the other end. Don't move. Your father and I are on our way. Emily hung up and slid down the wall, sitting on the carpeted floor of the hallway. Feeling the warmth of her mother's body, the baby finally stopped crying and drifted to sleep, its tiny fists tightly clenched. Emily stared at those little fists and gritted her teeth. 20 minutes later, the elevator doors slid open and Emily's parents rushed out. Seeing her daughter sitting on the hallway floor, her mother ran over and pulled her into a tight embrace. Oh, my sweet girl. You must have been so scared. Emily's father glared at the locked door and shook his head. Let's go home. This is no place for you to be. He helped Emily to her feet. Before the elevator doors closed, Emily looked back and gave the locked door one final, lingering look. That night, in her old childhood bedroom at her parents' suburban house, Emily lay in the dark next to her sleeping baby, the glow of her phone screen illuminating her face. In the search bar, she typed words one after another. Divorce lawyer, equitable distribution, child custody, marital asset dissipation. Her eyes gleamed coldly in the dark. She saved the number of a top family law firm and locked the screen. The only sound in the room was the soft, rhythmic breathing of her baby. The next morning, Emily spoke to her father over breakfast. Dad, can you help me with something today? Anything. Where to? I need to get my things from the condo. I'm calling a locksmith to drill the lock. Her father set down his coffee mug and nodded. Let's go right after we eat. An hour later, the locksmith popped the lock open. Emily stepped inside and looked around. Strewn across the living room sofa were brand new clothes with the tags ripped off. On the kitchen island lay a sticky note in Susan's messy handwriting, a shopping list for European designer boutiques, and a travel guidebook laid open. Emily picked up the note. Makeup for Chloe. A leather belt for Paul, luxury supplements for me. Emily crumpled the paper in her fist. Dad, I just need to grab my documents. I'll be quick. Emily walked into the master bedroom and opened her safe. She pulled out the paperwork, the property deed her parents had transferred to her name exclusively before the marriage, a folder containing her bank statements and her checkbooks. She shoved them into her tote bag. She packed the baby's clothes and essentials into a duffel bag and took one last look around the place. Her father was waiting by the door, watching her face. Did you get everything? He asked. Yes, Emily replied shortly, stepping out without looking back. That afternoon, Emily walked into a sleek downtown law office. After giving her name to the receptionist, she was ushered into a conference room. Emily took the documents from her bag, spread them on the mahogany table, and began to speak. This condo was bought by my parents as a premarital gift. It is solely in my name. Here is the deed and the transfer records. My husband hasn't contributed a single dime to the principal. The lawyer reviewed the documents and nodded. This is airtight. Assets acquired before marriage and gifted specifically to you remain your separate property. But we need to move fast. Emily closed her eyes, took a breath, and looked at the lawyer with sheer determination. Do it immediately. I want to sell the condo too. I want everything liquidated and done before they get back. The attorney studied Emily's face for a moment before picking up his pen. Understood. We'll start the filings today. Walking out of the firm, Emily dialed a real estate investor she found online. Her eyes were completely dry. There were no tears left to shed. 2 days later, the investor called. Emily, we have a cash offer. They can close in escrow immediately. Should I send over the paperwork? Yes. Push it through. Emily hung up and drove to the bank. She closed all her personal savings and CD accounts, transferring everything to a new account at a different bank. She then called her broker to liquidate her mutual funds. Next, she reported the supplementary credit cards under Paul's name as stolen and canceled them. After everything was secured, she went online and changed her mailing address to her parents' house. Sitting in her car, Emily opened her contacts. She blocked Susan's number, then Chloe's. Finally, she typed out a text message to Paul. The condo is sold. The divorce papers will be served to you shortly. Don't ever look for me. She hit send and tossed the phone into the passenger seat. Back at her parents' house, Emily dropped her bags and looked at her mother holding the baby. Mom, can I stay here for a while? Her mother rocked the baby and looked her daughter in the eye. What kind of question is that? This is your home. Where else would you go? Dinner's ready. Go wash up. Her father lowered his newspaper in the living room and spoke gently. I'm just glad you're home. Emily looked down, biting her lip hard. Before the tears could fall, she looked up at her sleeping baby's face, pressed a kiss to his soft cheek and whispered, Mommy is going to protect you. As the automatic doors of the International Arrivals Terminal slid open, Paul pushed his sunglasses up to his forehead and wheeled a massive suitcase. Behind him walked Susan, loaded down with shopping bags from high-end boutiques. His sister Chloe was busy taking selfies and giggling at her phone. Man, there's nothing like traveling right, Mom. Paul stretched and looked back at Susan. Absolutely. Nothing beats a family vacation. I'm sure Emily got plenty of rest at the hospital, so she'll be fine, Susan added, dismissively adjusting her shopping bags. Chloe chimed in without looking up from her screen. Paul, I need to show my fiancé this new bag I bought, so let's hurry up. Let's just grab an Uber XL. The three loaded into the luxury SUV and leaned back in their leather seats, watching the city lights blur past the windows. Susan scrolled through their vacation photos with a wide grin. Arriving at the condo's underground parking garage, Paul wheeled his luggage toward his assigned spot. He stopped dead in his tracks. Parked in his space was a sleek black imported car he had never seen before. What the hell? Who parked in my spot? Paul frowned, checking the license plate. Susan walked up behind him. Call the concierge. Someone probably just made a mistake. Let's just go upstairs and put our bags down first. Paul shook his head in annoyance and pressed the elevator button. Arriving at the 12th floor, the trio stood in front of the door. Paul dropped his suitcase and reached out to punch in his new code, but his fingers stopped midair. The smart lock was different. It wasn't the one he had installed. It was a completely different high-end model. What is this? Paul muttered, trying to type in the code anyway. A harsh beep rejected it. He tried the old code. Another red light. Paul, why aren't you opening it? Chloe whined from behind. Susan pushed past Paul and glared at the door. That bitch did this. Emily. She changed the lock while we were gone. The absolute nerve of her, Susan started pounding on the heavy door with her fists. Emily, Emily, open this door. Open it right now. Her shrieks echoed down the quiet corridor. Chloe covered her ears and stepped back. Paul grabbed his mother's arm. Mom, calm down. The neighbors will hear. Calm down. Whose house is this? How dare she change the locks? Susan shook off Paul's grip and hammered on the door again. Suddenly, the door swung open from the inside. A strange man stood there. He was a burly, middle-aged American guy in a t-shirt, staring at them with a deep scowl. Who are you people? And why are you banging on my door? Susan looked the man up and down and yelled, Your door! This is my son's house. Who the hell are you to be inside? The man crossed his arms and pointed to the side of the door. A new brass nameplate was affixed there. It bore a name none of them recognized. This is my property. I signed the closing papers and moved in a week ago. Do you want me to show you the deed? The man said, his voice calm but threatening. All the color drained from Paul's face. Wait, what do you mean? This condo is in my name. No, it wasn't. The title search was clean, and the cash sale was perfectly legal. If you don't leave my hallway right now, I'm calling the cops for trespassing. The man pulled out his phone. Panicking, Paul dug into his pocket for his phone. When he turned it on amidst a flood of notifications, a single text message from Emily popped up on the screen. The condo is sold. The divorce papers will be served to you shortly. Don't ever look for me. The phone slipped from Paul's hand and clattered to the floor, the screen cracking. He didn't even try to pick it up. His lips trembled, but no words came out. What? She sold the house. Susan snatched the phone off the floor and read the screen. Her face turned crimson, then paper white. Her knees gave out and she collapsed onto the hallway floor. That crazy bitch. She sold her husband's house. Is she even human? Susan began to wail, slapping the carpet. Chloe looked at her brother and mother in pure terror and backed away. Paul, is this real? What are we going to do? Paul didn't answer. He leaned heavily against the wall and slowly slid down to the floor. The building concierge had heard the commotion and come upstairs. Seeing the mess, he called the police. Soon, 2 NYPD officers stepped off the elevator. We've verified that you are not the legal owners of this property. You need to vacate the premises immediately, the officer told Paul firmly. Susan grabbed the officer's pant leg and sobbed. It's a lie. This is my son's house. My daughter-in-law stole it from us. She's a thief. Ma'am, the title has been legally transferred. There's nothing we can do here. You'll have to take up any civil disputes in family court. Now let go or I'm taking you in. The officer pried Susan's hands off him. Paul stood up with dead empty eyes and grabbed the handle of his suitcase. The bags were full of expensive luxury goods, but the 3 of them no longer had a home to return to. Out on the dark city street, the 3 of them stood shivering with their luggage. Susan threw her shopping bags onto the sidewalk and screamed, Paul, what are we going to do? Where are we going to sleep? Paul turned to Chloe. Chloe, you have an apartment. Right, let's go there for now. Chloe stepped back, waving her hands frantically. No way, my fiancé is practically living with me right now. What is he going to say if you and Mom just show up with all your bags, Chloe? Susan shrieked, but Chloe turned her back and kept walking backwards. Mom, I have my own life. This isn't just for a day or two. What do you expect me to do? She quickly hailed a passing yellow cab, jumped in, and sped off. Susan stared at the taillights of the taxi and let out a bitter, hollow laugh. Look at that. Even my own flesh and blood. There's no one you can trust in this world. In silence, Paul searched for a cheap motel nearby on his phone. Dragging their heavy suitcases, their shadows stretched long and pathetic beneath the flickering streetlights. After a sleepless night in a dingy motel, Paul took his mother to a strip mall law office the next morning. As soon as Susan sat down, she slammed her hand on the desk. That witch Emily sold our house out from under us. Is that legal? Isn't that fraud? The sleazy attorney adjusted his tie and looked at her. Tell me the whole situation. Paul made his mother sit back. While my wife was in the hospital having our baby, we went on a short vacation. When we came back, the condo was sold. I lived there too, and the property value went up a lot since we got married. Don't I have a right to half of it? The lawyer nodded, taking notes. Whose name was on the deed? My wife's. But we're married and we live there together. Doesn't that count for something? It depends on if it was acquired before or after the marriage. Paul hesitated. Her parents bought it for her before the wedding. But because we live there as a married couple, I have equity in it, right? The lawyer put his pen down and looked Paul in the eye. Honestly, that's an uphill battle. Premarital assets gifted by parents are rarely considered marital property subject to division. But we can try to argue that your contributions increased its value. Susan leaned forward. That's exactly right. My son was the breadwinner. He paid for the upkeep. We need to sue her for emotional distress, too. Emily destroyed our family. Paul nodded, clenching his fists. We're filing a lawsuit. I want half the value of that condo, plus damages. And so Paul's side filed their petition. A few days later, Emily opened the thick manila envelope delivered to her parents' house. She slowly read through the legal jargon. Half the value of the property plus exorbitant damages. Emily let out a short, sharp laugh and tossed the papers onto the kitchen table. Her lawyer spoke calmly through the phone. As expected, it's a shakedown. Don't worry. Because we have airtight documentation of the premarital gift, they won't win a dime of the property sale. But there is one thing we need to look into: the flow of your husband's money. What do you mean? Emily asked. Before you emptied your accounts, a massive amount of cash was withdrawn from your joint savings. If we can trace where those marital funds went, it will absolutely destroy his case. Emily pressed her lips together. What should I do? I know a very reliable private investigator. He's excellent at forensic accounting and tracing financial records. Do you want me to put him on it? Yes, please. Do whatever it takes. Emily hung up and looked out the window. From the next room, she could hear the soft cooing of her baby. Meanwhile, Paul and Susan showed up at the gates of Emily's parents' suburban neighborhood. Standing on the sidewalk, Susan started screaming. Emily, come out here, you evil woman. You sold your husband's house and now you're hiding. Her voice echoed down the quiet, manicured street. Neighbors peeked out from behind their blinds, whispering. It didn't take long for a police cruiser to roll up. 2 officers stepped out. If you keep this up, you're going to get hit with a restraining order. Move along. Susan grabbed the officer's arm, fake sobbing. My daughter-in-law stole our house. We're the victims here. Take it to a judge, ma'am. You can't disturb the peace here. Humiliated, Paul grabbed his mother's arm and pulled her back. Mom, let's go. We're just making ourselves look crazy. Susan ground her teeth and shot a venomous glare at the house before letting Paul drag her away. A few days later, Emily's private investigator delivered his findings. He had tracked Paul's movements and secured ATM camera footage and bank transfer logs. When Emily's lawyer read the report, his eyebrows shot up. The missing money from the joint savings account had been wire transferred to Chloe's bank account. The lawyer called Emily immediately. "Emily, the money your husband drained went straight to his sister. It's a massive sum. We are filing a subpoena for Chloe's bank records right now." Emily gripped her phone tightly and closed her eyes. "We also found out what she spent it on. Recently, Chloe bought a brand new luxury SUV and paid cash for massive renovations on her new house. It looks like she's going all out for her upcoming wedding." Emily was silent for a long moment before she spoke, her voice icy cold. "Gather every piece of evidence. I want it all presented in court." The court date arrived. Paul and Susan walked into the courthouse looking smug, having rallied a few relatives to serve as character witnesses. Susan patted Paul's arm. "Don't worry. No judge is stupid enough to side with a woman who sells a house without telling her husband." "You're right, Mom. We're ending this today," Paul said, adjusting his cheap suit. Meanwhile, Emily had quietly prepared her final pieces of evidence, saved voicemails from Chloe begging for money, text messages, and the PI's financial reports. Her lawyer had one final surprise. "We subpoenaed Chloe's fiancé to testify." The judge allowed it. Emily simply nodded. In the courtroom, Paul shot Emily a nasty glare. Emily didn't look away. She stared right through him. When everyone was seated, Paul's lawyer stood up first. "Your Honor, Emily deceived her husband and in-laws and sold their primary residence without consent. This is a clear case of fraud, and she bears full responsibility for the destruction of this family." Next, Susan took the witness stand, dabbing at her dry eyes with a tissue. "From the very beginning, Emily was only after my son's money. She's incredibly materialistic. She doesn't know how to keep a home, and all she does is spend. You have no idea how much we suffered." A few relatives in the gallery nodded in agreement. Emily's lawyer stood up. "Your Honor, the property in question was purchased entirely with funds from Emily's parents prior to the marriage and was deeded exclusively in her name. It is a premarital asset." He submitted the documents to the clerk. "Here are the wire transfers and the deed. Mr. Paul did not contribute a single cent to the equity." The courtroom fell silent. Then Emily's lawyer pulled out the second stack of folders. "Furthermore, Your Honor, we have irrefutable proof that Mr. Paul dissipated marital assets by transferring tens of thousands of dollars from their joint savings into the account of his sister Chloe." Gasps rippled through the gallery. The color drained from Paul's face, and Susan stared at her son, her mouth hanging open. The judge looked down at Paul over his glasses. "Mr. Paul, can you explain these wire transfers?" Paul stood up, stammering. I just loaned it to my sister for her business. She was going to pay it back." "Do you have a promissory note or a repayment contract?" Paul bit his lip and looked down. He had nothing. Emily's lawyer displayed several blown-up photographs on a projector. Chloe used these marital funds to purchase a luxury SUV and to gut-renovate a house. This was not a business loan. This was a slush fund to pay for her extravagant wedding preparations. Everyone in the room turned to look at Chloe, who was shrinking into her seat in the back row. Right on cue, Emily's star witness entered the room, Chloe's fiancé, Ryan. Before taking the stand, Ryan locked eyes with Chloe. She looked at him with tear-filled eyes, shaking her head pleadingly. Ryan looked disgusted, clenched his jaw, and took the stand. "Mr. Ryan," Emily's lawyer, began, "what did Chloe tell you regarding the source of the funds for your wedding and home renovations?" "She told me it was an inheritance. From her late grandmother." "Did she actually receive an inheritance?" "No. I looked into it after I got the subpoena." Murmurs erupted in the gallery again. Ryan turned to look directly at Chloe. "Chloe, you lied to me about everything. I thought we were building a life together honestly. I can't marry someone who steals from a new mother to fund a lifestyle she can't afford. The wedding is off. We're done." Chloe leaped out of her seat and screamed, her legs giving out as she collapsed to the floor. Beside her, the shock was too much for Susan, who slumped over fainting in the aisle. The courtroom devolved into chaos. A bailiff called 911, and paramedics arrived to wheel the two women out on stretchers. Once order was restored, the judge struck his gavel and delivered his ruling. The petitioner's request for equitable distribution of the real estate is denied. The property is legally recognized as a premarital gift belonging solely to Emily. Furthermore, considering Mr. Paul's egregious dissipation of marital funds and the fact that he abandoned his postpartum wife and newborn child, I am granting Emily's petition for divorce with full custody and ordering Mr. Paul to to fully reimburse the dissipated funds, plus legal fees. Paul gripped the back of his chair and hung his head in absolute defeat. Emily sat quietly next to her lawyer, her hands neatly folded in her lap. Her face showed neither joy nor anger, only the quiet exhaustion of someone who had survived a brutal war. Stepping out of the courthouse, Emily looked up at the sky. The victory felt hollow. A strange sense of emptiness washed over her. A few days later, her lawyer called to say Paul had filed an appeal, claiming Emily had bribed the witness. It's a desperate, impossible argument. He will lose, the lawyer assured her. But I should also warn you. Paul has been posting defamatory lies about you on Facebook and Reddit, claiming you're a gold digger. We can file a separate defamation suit. Emily gripped her phone tightly. It was endless. Just handle it, she whispered, hanging up. She walked into the nursery and lay down next to her sleeping baby, staring at the ceiling. Even though she had won, the invisible weight still crushed her shoulders. Every night, she suffered from nightmares. There were days she couldn't even force a smile when she looked at her child. One afternoon, while organizing boxes in her parents' basement, Emily noticed an old, battered leather portfolio. She pulled it out and unzipped it. Inside were her sketchbooks and design portfolios from her college days at art school. She sat on the concrete floor and turned the pages one by one. In the corner of one sketch, she saw a note she had written to herself years ago. Emily, you are going to be a brilliant designer. Her fingers traced the faded graphite. It felt like a voice calling out to her from a forgotten past. Emily hugged the sketchbook to her chest and sat there for a long time. The next day, Emily strapped her baby into a stroller and left the house. She walked aimlessly downtown until she found herself in front of the city convention center. A massive banner hung over the entrance, National Baby and Toddler Expo. Emily stopped. Almost instinctively, she reached into her tote bag and touched the old sketchbook she had brought with her. She didn't know why she had packed it, but she pushed the stroller through the expo doors. Inside the massive exhibition hall, hundreds of booths displayed colorful, high-tech baby gear under bright halogen lights. Emily slowly wandered the aisles. She tested baby carriers, inspected bottles, and examined the suspension on expensive strollers. Suddenly, she pulled her sketchbook from her bag. Digging around for a pen, she found one next to a stray crayon. She sat down on a bench, opened to a blank page, and began sketching rapidly. She noted the structural flaws in the current carriers on the market and drafted a completely new ergonomic design. As she was intensely focused on drawing, someone gently tapped her shoulder. "Emily, is that you?" She looked up to see a tall, sharply dressed man smiling down at her. "I'm Lucas. We were in the same industrial design cohort in college." Emily's eyes widened. "Lucas. Wow, it's been years. What are you doing here?" Lucas looked down at the stroller and smiled warmly. "Wow, you have a baby. You're a mom now." Emily forced a polite smile, adjusting her baby's blanket. "Yeah. What about you?" Just visiting. Lucas tapped the exhibitor badge on his chest. "I started a baby products company a few years ago. We have a booth over in the main hall." He pointed toward a massive, sleek display area. Emily looked at him in shock. "You own the company?" "Yeah. Started small in a garage, but here we are." "Wait, what are you drawing?" Lucas's eyes locked onto the open sketchbook in her lap. Emily quickly tried to close it. "Oh, nothing. Just doodling. Hold on, let me see." Lucas didn't wait for permission. He gently stopped her hands and looked at the pages. His eyes darted across her intricate sketches: a baby carrier with a revolutionary weight distribution strap, an adjustable nursing pillow, and modular storage add-ons for strollers. He slowly nodded. "Did you draw these just now?" Emily nodded. "This carrier concept, the way you've distributed the lumbar weight so simply, I've never seen anything like it. You're still a genius, Emily." Emily's eyes watered. Those words struck the deepest part of her heart. She couldn't remember the last time someone had called her by her name and recognized her talent. "You're just flattering me, Lucas. I've been in this industry for a long time. I know good design when I see it." He handed the sketchbook back. "Let's go grab a coffee. We need to talk." Sitting in a Starbucks near the expo, Lucas handed Emily a latte and studied her face. She had dark circles under her eyes and had lost a lot of weight. "Emily, is everything okay? You don't look well." Emily gripped the warm paper cup tightly. She hadn't planned on telling anyone, but under Lucas's patient, non-judgmental gaze, the words just spilled out. "When I got discharged from the hospital, my husband changed the locks and went on vacation with his family. We're going through a brutal divorce right now." Lucas set his coffee down, his face hardening. "I sold the condo because it was mine, but now he's appealing the court decision and dragging my name through the mud online." It just never ends. Her voice cracked. The baby started fussing in the stroller and she quickly rocked it. Lucas was quiet for a long time. Then, in a low, steady voice, he said, "Emily, do you remember when you won the grand prize at our senior design showcase?" Emily looked up. "The judges said your work was professional grade. You beat me for that award, remember?" He smiled gently. "It seems like you're the only one who forgot how brilliant you are." Emily lifted her cup, but her hands were shaking too much to drink. "Lucas, I'm useless now. My days consist of mixing formula, reading legal documents, and having panic attacks. That's it. You're struggling because you're carrying a burden meant for 3 people all by yourself. It has nothing to do with your capability." He paused. "My company is launching a new R&D team. We want to design products that actual mothers desperately need. What would you say to leading that team?" Emily's eyes widened. "Me? But I have 0 corporate experience. Experience can be taught. The intuition I saw in that sketch is sharper than any senior designer on my payroll. You looked at a problem as a mother and solved it as an engineer. You can't teach that in school." Emily looked down at her baby who had woken up and was cooing at her. "You don't have to answer right now. Think about it." Lucas slid his sleek matte black business card across the table and stood up. That night, Emily sat at the dining table with her parents. She placed Lucas's business card on the wood. "A guy I went to college with offered me a job at his company. They design baby gear." Her mother picked up the card. "Do you want to take it? I want to try." "But the baby." Her father put his newspaper down and looked at her. "We will watch our grandchild. You go to work." Her mother grabbed Emily's hand. "He's right. Go rebuild your life. We've got your back." Emily looked at her parents and bowed her head, crying tears of relief. The next morning, Emily called Lucas. "Lucas, I'll take the job." She heard a warm laugh on the other end. "Good choice. I'll see you at the office tomorrow." Emily hung up and opened her sketchbook. On a fresh blank page, she drew the first crisp line. Her hand trembled slightly, but she didn't stop. During her first week, Emily pitched her carrier concept to the executive board. 3 men in suits sat across from her, arms crossed. "The design is interesting," one said dismissively, "but it's too idealistic. The manufacturing costs will eat our margins. It's not cost-effective." Emily's hands shook as she gathered her presentation materials. Walking out of the boardroom, she heard them whispering doubtfully. She stopped in the hallway, closed her eyes, and took a deep breath. She gritted her teeth and marched back to her desk. For the next 2 weeks, Emily ran on 4 hours of sleep. She hand-stitched prototypes. She went to local parks and surveyed over 100 mothers, compiling the data meticulously. When she walked back into the boardroom, she didn't just bring sketches. She dropped physical prototypes onto the mahogany table and fired up a data-driven PowerPoint. 70% of the mothers surveyed cited severe lumbar and shoulder pain as the primary reason they stop using carriers after 6 months, Emily stated firmly. "This prototype solves that. And, by changing the buckle supplier to a vendor in Ohio, the production cost is only 15% higher, but we can command a 40% premium at retail because of the ergonomic certification." The executives passed the prototype around, exchanging surprised looks. "You couldn't argue with hard data. Let's run a beta test," the lead executive finally said, raising his hand to approve the budget. Leaving the room, Emily leaned against the hallway wall and let out a shaky breath. For the first time in months, a genuine, powerful smile broke across her face. Emily's team went into crunch time. She poured every ounce of her frustration, love, and experience as a mother into the product. On the nights she had to work late, Lucas would quietly bring her takeout from her favorite Thai place, leave it on her desk, and go back to his office. Meanwhile, Paul lost his appeal. The judge threw it out with prejudice and upheld the order to pay Emily's legal fees and restitution. Drowning in debt and unable to secure a real loan, Paul turned to shady payday lenders and underground loan sharks to keep up appearances. Susan, stuck living in a cramped apartment with Chloe, who had been dumped and was miserable, spent every day bitterly blaming Emily for their ruined lives. Emily, however, was stepping out of the shadows. Her confidence returned, and her voice in meetings grew authoritative. When the final prototype of the carrier was unveiled, the company brass was floored. After the evaluation meeting, Lucas walked up to Emily as she was packing up. "You killed it in there, Emily," Lucas said softly. Emily looked up at him. Her eyes were glassy, but she was smiling. "Thank you, Lucas. Thank you for giving me this chance." "You made the chance happen," he replied, smiling back. Outside the high-rise windows, the Chicago skyline glittered in the night. 2 years later, Emily launched her flagship line, "Dear My Baby." The day it dropped, the company's website crashed from the sheer volume of traffic. The carrier went viral on TikTok, hailed as a miracle for moms, and sold out in 3 weeks. Retail buyers from Target and Bye Bye Baby blew up their phones. Within a year, they had distribution deals across North America and Europe. Emily's face started appearing in Forbes and business podcasts. Reporters were obsessed with her story, a single mother who transformed her struggles into a multi-million-dollar empire. Sitting in front of a camera for a morning news show, Emily spoke calmly. As a mother, I encountered daily struggles that no one was fixing, so I decided to fix them myself. That soundbite resonated with millions of women. Winter arrived. Emily sat in the front row of a grand ballroom at the Ritz-Carlton, wearing a stunning black evening gown. It was the annual National Innovation Awards. The room was packed with industry titans and press. Lucas sat 3 rows back, watching the stage intently. And the Innovative Entrepreneur of the Year goes to Emily, lead director of Dear My Baby, the host announced. The ballroom erupted in applause. Emily stood up, smoothed her dress, and walked up the steps to the stage. She accepted the heavy crystal trophy and stepped up to the microphone. Thank you, Emily. Began taking a deep breath. 2 years ago, I hit rock bottom. I stood in a freezing hallway holding my newborn with nowhere to go. I want to thank my parents who never stopped believing in me. I want to thank Lucas, who saw my potential when I was invisible. And my incredible team. Her voice trembled slightly. But most of all, I thank my son. Without him, none of this would exist. He is my reason for everything. The applause was deafening. Afterward, at the press junket, a reporter raised his hand. Emily, your very public and difficult divorce is well known online. Would you say your massive success is a form of revenge against your ex-husband? The room went dead silent. Her PR manager subtly nudged her, but Emily just smiled calmly. My success is built on the love I have for my child and the belief I have in myself. The word revenge isn't in my vocabulary anymore. I simply don't think about him. More applause followed. When it was all over, Emily slipped out into the quiet hotel corridor. Lucas was leaning against a marble pillar holding his car keys. You were amazing up there, he said. You're still here. Obviously. I wasn't going to leave without taking the woman of the hour to dinner. They drove to a quiet, dimly lit Italian restaurant. Raising their wine glasses, they toasted. Lucas set his glass down and looked deeply into Emily's eyes. Emily, there's something I need to say. I've wanted to say it since your first week at the office, but the timing never felt right. Emily sat perfectly still, watching you fight through hell. All I could do was bring you dinner. I fell in love with you, watching you work late, seeing you smile at your team, even when you were exhausted. I fell in love with how you never gave up in front of the board and how you look at pictures of your son when you think no one is watching. I want to protect you. I want to be there for you. Emily gripped her napkin in her lap, looking down. Lucas, my life is complicated. I come with baggage. I have a son. You're not complicated. Your past is what made you the incredible woman sitting in front of me. And I love your son too. I want all of it. She looked up at him, a vulnerable, beautiful smile breaking through. I've felt more than just gratitude for a long time, Lucas. I just didn't think I had the right to say it. Lucas reached across the white tablecloth and took her hand. She didn't pull away. A few months later, on a sunny weekend, Emily took her toddler to a local park. The little boy, just learning to string words together, waddled happily, gripping her hand. Mommy, big tree. Yes, baby, it's a huge tree. Let's go see it. They sat on a park bench. Emily pulled out a juice box and some snacks. As she wiped a crumb from his cheek and laughed, the TVs in a nearby electronics store were playing a rerun of her award acceptance speech. In a filthy, dimly lit motel room on the other side of the city, Paul stared at a cracked TV screen. The camera zoomed in on Emily's radiant, successful face. Paul ground his teeth, his jaw visibly ticking. Beside him, Susan snatched the TV remote and slammed the power button. Turn it off. I don't want to look at her. I can't stand seeing her act like she's so perfect. Susan threw the remote at the wall and lay back on the stained mattress. Her skin had a sickly yellow pallor and her hands shook violently as she clutched her chest. Paul just stared blankly at the popcorn ceiling. A few weeks later, Lucas invited Emily and her son to his parents' house for a Sunday roast. When Lucas's mother opened the door, she glanced at the toddler and frowned slightly. "Lucas, she seems nice, but she has a child. Are you sure you're ready for that?" she whispered in the foyer. "Mom, he's a part of the woman I love. He's my family now too," Lucas replied firmly. At the dinner table, Emily was polite and gracious. "Thank you so much for having us, Mrs. Davis. The food is wonderful." The toddler pointed at the mashed potatoes. "Yummy, Grandma," that single innocent word melted Lucas's mother's heart. After dinner, she pulled Emily aside and held her hand. "Emily, you've been through so much. Lucas told me everything. If you ever need anything, you call me, okay?" She scooped the toddler up and kissed his forehead. Emily bit her lip, holding back tears, and beamed. "Thank you." Lucas watched from the doorway, smiling quietly. That spring, Lucas proposed. He enlisted the toddler's help. The little boy waddled over to Emily in the backyard, holding a small bouquet of daisies. Tied to the ribbon was a sparkling diamond ring. When Emily looked up, Lucas was down on one knee. "Emily, let's be a family." Emily burst into tears, nodding vigorously, and held out her hand. As Lucas slipped the ring onto her finger, the little boy threw his arms around Lucas's neck. "Daddy," it was the first time he had ever called him that. Lucas's eyes went red, and he held the boy tightly. 3 months after their beautiful outdoor wedding, a framed family portrait hung proudly in the living room of their new house. But joy is often fragile. One afternoon, the toddler came home from daycare lethargic. By evening, he was burning up. 104 degrees. "Lucas, his fever won't break. We need to go to the ER," Emily screamed. Lucas sped home from the office. In the triage room at the hospital, the boy began convulsing. A seizure. Emily dropped to the floor, screaming his name. After stabilizing him, the ER doctor came out looking grim. "The seizure has stopped, but we need an MRI and a lumbar puncture. Something is wrong neurologically." Emily grabbed the doctor's coat. "Is my baby going to live?" The doctor couldn't give her a straight answer. Days turned into a week of agonizing tests. Emily didn't sleep, sitting vigil by the hospital crib. Lucas practically lived there, stepping into the hallway only to make desperate phone calls to specialists across the country. Finally, a pediatric neurologist gave them the diagnosis, a severely rare malformation in the brain causing the seizures. Surgery is the only option, but it's incredibly risky. There are maybe 3 surgeons in the United States qualified to perform this specific microsurgery, the doctor explained. Emily fell to her knees. Lucas caught her holding her up. "Find them," Lucas told the doctor. "Whatever the cost, wherever they are, we'll go." Sitting in the dim hospital room, Emily held her son's limp hand. "Mommy's going to save you. I promise." Word got out. A few days later, Paul suddenly appeared in the hospital lobby. He looked disheveled and desperate. He dropped to his knees when Emily walked out to get coffee. "Emily, I heard what happened. Please forgive me. Let me see my son." Emily stared at him with eyes like absolute zero. "He is not your son. Get out." "Emily, I'm his father. I want to help pay for the surgery. I'll do anything." "You owe hundreds of thousands to loan sharks. Do not bring your filthy, blood-stained money near my child," Emily said, icily turning on her heel. Paul showed up every day, lingering in the lobby. Soon the police arrived and arrested him. He had been caught setting up a fraudulent GoFundMe page using his son's medical tragedy to steal money to pay off his bookies. Emily didn't even blink when she heard the news. Meanwhile, Lucas worked miracles. He spent nights on Zoom calls with hospitals. "Emily, I found him," Lucas said one morning, exhausted but wired. The top pediatric neurosurgeon at Boston Children's Hospital. He's flying back from a conference in Europe next week. A week, Emily looked at the monitors. Can he hold on that long? He has to. The surgery was going to cost a fortune, even with insurance. Lucas quietly liquidated a chunk of his equity in the company. When Emily's staff and the thousands of mothers who followed her brand heard the news, a massive crowdfunding campaign exploded organically. They raised the funds in 48 hours. Lucas relentlessly forwarded the boy's charts to the surgeon in Boston. 2 days before the scheduled flight, the monitors in the hospital room suddenly went wild. Alarms blared. The boy was seizing again, his face turning blue. "Code Blue nurses!" shouted, rushing in. "Mom, you need to step out!" Emily collapsed in the hallway, pressing her hands together in prayer. "Please, please, God, please." Lucas arrived, sliding across the floor to hold her tightly. Suddenly, the elevator doors dinged open. A silver-haired man carrying a medical duffel bag rushed out. It was the surgeon from Boston. "Prep the OR," he yelled to the attending. "We're going in right now." As they wheeled the boy down the hall, Emily ran alongside the gurney. The boy's eyes fluttered open for a split second. Mommy! Mommy's right here, baby. You're going to take a little nap, and when you wake up, I'll be the first thing you see. The heavy doors to the operating room swung shut. Emily slumped against the wall. The red in-use light flicked on. It stayed on for 10 agonizing hours. When the light finally clicked off, Emily, Lucas, and her parents all stood up, holding their breath. The surgeon walked out, pulling off his surgical cap. He looked exhausted, but smiled. The surgery was a complete success. We removed the malformation. The worst is over. Emily let out a gut-wrenching sob and buried her face in Lucas's chest. Her mother wept loudly, and her father leaned back against the wall, covering his eyes. 5 days later, the boy was moved out of the ICU. When Emily squeezed his little hand, his eyes slowly fluttered open. Mommy. Mommy's here. You did so good, my brave boy. A week later, Emily received a forwarded letter from her lawyer. It was from Paul, sent from a county jail. He had changed the beneficiary of his meager life insurance policy to his son, attaching a pathetic letter begging for forgiveness. Just put it in the shredder, Emily told her lawyer. In that exact moment, the name Paul was completely and permanently erased from her mind. Rehab began. Lucas took a leave of absence to take the boy to physical therapy every single day. Because the crowdfunding had raised double what the surgery cost, Emily made an announcement. We are launching the Dear My Baby Foundation to fund pediatric neurosurgeries for low-income families. The move cemented her company as a beloved national brand. When Emily finally returned to the corporate office, her entire staff surprised her in the lobby with applause, balloons, and a cake. Welcome back, boss. Months later, at the rehab center, the boy stood at the end of the padded mat. Come to mommy, Emily said, kneeling with her arms open. The boy took a step. 1, 2, 3. His legs wobbled, but he didn't fall. 4, 5. He practically lunged into Emily's arms, laughing. Mommy Lucas cheered wildly from behind her. That night, Emily opened her MacBook. She began typing a manuscript, dedicating it to every struggling mother in the world. She poured her entire journey onto the pages. On the boy's first day of kindergarten, Emily held his right hand and Lucas held his left. They walked up to the school gates. I'm a big kid now, the boy cheered. Lucas adjusted the straps of his little backpack and kissed his head. A few months later, at the school's Springfield Day, the boy was running in the 50-yard dash. Halfway down the track, his shoe flew off and he tumbled into the grass. Lucas immediately started running toward the field. But the boy hopped right back up. I'm okay, Daddy, I can still run. That's my boy. Go, Lucas yelled. The boy didn't win the race, but the moment he crossed the finish line, he sprinted straight into Emily's arms. Seeing her son running across a sunny field, the same boy who had laid dying in a hospital bed was a prize far greater than any gold medal. Driving home from the school, they stopped at a red light. Emily looked out the window and saw the back alley of a rundown, greasy spoon diner. Sitting on an overturned milk crate, scrubbing heavy grease off pots with a hose, was Susan. The arrogant, cruel woman was gone. She was just a broken, exhausted old woman. Everything okay, honey? Lucas asked, noticing her staring. Yeah, it's nothing. Let's go home. The light turned green and they drove away. Emily felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no pity, just indifference. A few days later, an email popped up from her old private investigator. It was a link to a local news article, unidentified male found dead in City Park, suspected victim of loan shark violence. Even without a name, Emily knew it was Paul. She dragged the email to the trash bin and emptied it. That part of her life was officially dead and buried. That evening, Emily, Lucas, and their son stood on a grassy, vacant lot in the suburbs. They were looking at architectural blueprints for their custom-built dream home. The great room goes here, Lucas pointed, and the kids' rooms will be over on the east wing so they get the morning sun. That's my room, the boy yelled, running in circles. And the baby's room, the sound of their laughter echoed across the open space. As the sun began to set, Emily leaned against Lucas. I finished the manuscript for my book today, she told him. Really, that's amazing. I'm donating 100% of the royalties to the Children's Hospital wing. Lucas wrapped his arm around her waist. You're incredible, Emily. Mom, Dad, hurry up, their son yelled from the sidewalk. They jogged over to him, their 3 shadows merging into one long silhouette under the amber glow of the streetlights. Back in their current living room, the family portrait hung proudly on the wall. Right next to it was an empty, hammered brass frame waiting for a new photo. Underneath Emily's loose sweater, Lucas gently placed his hand on her growing stomach. A new life was blooming. Thank you, Lucas, Emily whispered. No thank you, he replied, kissing her temple. The woman who had stood locked out of her own home on a freezing night was once the saddest person in the world. But she didn't stay on the floor crying. She got up and kept walking. The ultimate payback to those who abandoned her wasn't destroying them. It was rebuilding herself into something unbreakable. True revenge isn't inflicting pain. It's finding absolute, unshakable happiness. And that is exactly what Emily did. Meanwhile, the husband and in-laws who threw her away dug their own graves and fell in. If anyone listening to this right now is going through hell, just know that it's going to be okay. Just like Emily, all it takes is one step forward, and that one step is the beginning of an entirely new life. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, please leave a comment and subscribe.